Hello and welcome. My name is Anna Tabor and I'm the director of the Pension Action Center. Thank you so much for joining us for our annual fundraiser. The theme of our event today is retirement security during and after COVID. We are thrilled to be welcoming nationally syndicated columnist Michelle Singletary as our keynote speaker. And we are also looking forward to recognizing and congratulating our colleague Len Fishman as he retires from his position as the director of the Gerontology Institute at UMass Boston. Before we begin our program, I want to note that this event is being recorded. And I'd like to sincerely thank our institutional sponsors: AARP Massachusetts, Zarnowski Consulting, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Foundation, Winston & Strawn, Sageview Advisory Group, our primary sponsors, Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane, Ropes and Gray, and United Way of Massachusetts Bay and Merrimack Valley. And our official sponsor, Holland and Hart. I also want to thank all of our individual sponsors, our host committee, the Gerontology Institute, and the McCormick Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies at UMass Boston. And I want to thank McDermott, Will, and Emery, who very graciously agreed to host our event in person at their beautiful Boston offices earlier this year. Unfortunately, we did have to pivot to an all virtual event, but we are so glad to have all of you joining us on Zoom today. During today's presentation, you're going to hear about the work that we do at the Pension Action Center. And you're also going to have the chance to hear from some of our clients about how the work that the Pension Action Center does has made a difference in their lives. Without you, none of this would be possible. The fact is that we need your financial support in order to continue providing the free services that we provide to our clients. The Pension Action Center helps workers and retirees whose benefits are wrongly denied. They've been counting on their 401k accounts and their defined benefit pensions to support them when they retire. And the Pension Action Center is there to help them when things go wrong. We were founded in 1994 and it initially served just Massachusetts. A few years later, we expanded to all of New England. And in 2012, with a generous grant from the RRF Foundation for Aging, we expanded to serve Illinois as well. We've helped more than 10,000 people through our free helpline, and we've recovered benefits for our clients that are worth more than $65 million. These are benefits that sustain our clients, often as a monthly benefit payment that continues throughout our client's life. I want to take a moment to recognize the people who do this work, PAC's incredible staff, volunteers, and student interns. This year, we have again benefited from the amazing work of our volunteer pension counselors. And in addition, we've had the opportunity to expand our pro bono program through new partnerships with McDermott, Will, and Emery, Winston & Strawn, and Ropes and Gray. I want to sincerely thank all of our volunteers. We love working with you, and we are so grateful for all that you do to connect retirees with their benefits. Now I'd like to turn over the microphone to PAC staff attorney Tyler Compton, who's going to talk about how COVID has affected the Pension Action Center this year. Tyler?
Thanks, Anna, and thanks so much to everyone for joining us today. As we all know, the past 19 months have been devastating for so many people, and it has been especially devastating for the older people whom PAC serves. Throughout the pandemic, we've worked remotely to run our free pension helpline and to provide free legal representation to participants whose benefits are wrongly denied, and to make sure that we could still provide the same level of assistance. Since the pandemic began in March 2020, we've served over 500 people through the helpline, and we've recovered benefits worth $2 million. We're so proud of what our team here at PAC was able to accomplish, despite so many challenges. And I'm happy to report that our staff is returning to work at the office this fall and continue working towards making sure everyone gets their benefits that they've worked so hard for. We'll be turning the microphone over to Michelle Singletary in a few minutes, but before we do, we want to share a short video about our client, Joseph Smith.
The Pension Action Center helps retirees who need assistance getting the benefits that they earned. A lot of our clients earned a pension back in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. Now they're ready to retire, but unfortunately, they're running into problems that are too big for them to solve alone. That's where we step in. PAC operates a free helpline, and we also provide free legal representation. We've helped more than 10,000 people, and we've recovered benefits worth over $65 million. All of our client services are completely free, so all of the money recovered goes back to the people who earned it. One of the clients who we helped recently is Joseph Smith. This is his story.
My name is Joseph Smith, and my age is 78. I'm the same old as the president is. Before I was married, I was working on a plantation, and really that's where I learned how to drive is on the plantation. First I learned how to drive a tractor in the field. They planted soybeans and stuff like that. And I got a little more money when I could do that. Me and my wife was in the same high school, and after we graduated and everything, we got married. I no longer worked on the plantation no more because I started living in town with my wife's people. They built us a house. I worked for a Baldwin piano factory. And after I worked there for a couple of years, and then that's when I moved to Chicago. I was a grinder. I was a machine operator. I did so many things, I can't hardly think of all of them that I did. Most times we were working 10 hours a day, but sometimes we were working 12 hours a day. And I have worked on Sunday. You would pay 5 cents toward the pension, and they would pay 5 cents. That's what I understood about it. That's what they told us. And they called me back and asked me, would I come back because I was a wheel roller. We had to roll wheels that weigh over 1,000 pounds, roll it by hands. And I went back there and worked out there until they got rid of all of the wheels and all this stuff because they were closing down. They got rid of everything. I worked out there until they closed down completely. They said I never worked for them. That's what they're saying, that I never worked for them. And I had check stubs and all kind of paper that I got from them. And I even had the union paper because, like I said, I was a union steward in my department. That's my last check stub right there. It affected me a lot. Even though in this little apartment, I could barely pay rent. And it was just hard for me to make it. I don't eat a lot of food, but I couldn't even hardly buy food, you know. Yeah, I was ready to give up, but the Pension Action Center helped me to get it. If it wasn't for them, I'd have never got it, because I was ready to give up until then.
We see this happen a lot. What happens is a company closes down one of their facilities, and it gets really hard for the people who worked at that facility to figure out how to get their pension benefits.
I mean, they know how to help people, because I don't see no way that I could have got it without them. I'll tell you what, I feel like shouting. I felt real good. I went about telling all of my children. I said, oh yeah, I said, I'm finna get this pension now.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Since I lay my burden down, glory, glory, hallelujah. Since I lay my burden.
I want to thank Joseph Smith and his daughter for telling his story and sharing it with us. The truth is, we receive calls from a lot of people who are in the position that Mr. Smith found himself in. They are ready to retire and they try to start their benefit, but they learn that their employer doesn't have records anymore of their employment or of their pension. We get calls from people who are expecting to get a spousal survivor benefit and learn, unfortunately, after their spouse has passed away, that it's not going to be a straightforward matter for them to get that money. And we get many, many requests for assistance from people who have a 401k account or a pension benefit at a company that either closed down long ago or was merged or acquired, or perhaps something happened to the benefit plan itself. And those people simply have no idea where to go in order to start their benefits. And the truth is, this is a problem that is not going away, because it's estimated that there are approximately 10,000 baby boomers who are retiring every day in the United States. And many of these people worked during their careers somewhere where they earned a benefit, and it's a benefit that they're counting on. And as the years go by, and as more changes happen to these companies and to the benefit plans themselves, unfortunately, it only gets more difficult for them to start their benefits. This event today, this fundraiser, is very important for us to be able to continue providing our services to all of the clients who need them. I'm so excited to share with you that we've almost reached our fundraising goal, but we need to raise just $5,000 more in order to reach that goal. We're going to post in the chat a link to our fundraising website, and I hope that you'll consider clicking on the link and making a donation. Thank you so much for your support. And now it's my pleasure to transition to our keynote address. I'm so excited to introduce Michelle Singletary, who's joining us today. Michelle Singletary is a nationally syndicated personal finance columnist for the Washington Post. Her award-winning column, The Color of Money, is carried in dozens of newspapers nationwide. She's the author of 4 books. Her most recent book is called What to Do with Your Money When Crisis Hits, a Survival Guide. She's also written The 21-Day Financial Fast, Your Path to Financial Peace and Freedom, Your Money or Your Man, How You and Prince Charming can spend well and live rich, and Spend Well, Live Rich, How to Live Well with the Money You Have. For several years, she was a regular personal finance contributor for National Public Radio's afternoon program, Day to Day. She is also a frequent contributor to various NPR programs, including 1A and American Public Media's Marketplace Money. She is a frequent contributor to CNN. She's appeared on all 3 major networks, and she has prepared personal finance segments for local and national news programs, and for several cable and nationally syndicated programs, including Oprah, NBC's Today Show, The Early Show on CBS, MSNBC, and The View. She has also appeared on Meet the Press. We are incredibly excited to have her with us today. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction. And I tell you, I'm so incredibly moved by Joseph's story, because there's so many Josephs out there. I have them in my own life. And what you do to help people is such tremendously valuable to our society. So, I feel like this keynote is kind of preaching to the choir, but, sometimes the choir has to have the song too. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my Joseph in my life, my grandmother, mama, who raised me, and how our pension was so important to her. So my grandmother was a great money manager, but she only made about $13,000 a year at the height of her earning potential. And she just above the poverty line, raising 5 grandchildren, one of which was me. So my grandmother had her Social Security payment. She had a little bit of savings. My grandmother had $20,000 when she retired, which is huge for her, right? And her pension from the hospital where she worked. When she died, she had that $20,000 because all she would spend was her Social Security payment and her pension. That pension paid her utility bills. That pension helped her buy her church hats that she loved to wear to church. That pension kept her from tapping that $20,000 because it was her life savings and she didn't want to touch it. And so even though it was a small pension, it was a large part of her financial security. I have a pension now, and it's not lost on me that so many people don't have a pension. My husband has a pension. In fact, I actually like to joke. My husband is under the new federal system, the Federal Employees Retirement System. They call it FERS. But I like to joke that I should have married that guy that was under the civil service retirement system, because under that system, you could get at a maximum about 80% of your pay. So I said, darn it, if I had known that, I would have got the guy with a better pension. Although I'm still glad that I got the guy that I but there was a time when after 20 or 25 years, people could expect this payment. And up until the 80s, defined benefit pensions were the most retirement plan that people could look forward to. But today, I don't probably have to tell you this, you might already know this statistic. 17% of private sector workers have access to a pension, according to the Bureau of Labor. Employees now favor 401k plans or workplace retirement plans where people do it for themselves. And while there's nothing wrong with that, that relies on people's ability to save for themselves. And we know how difficult that is, even for people who have money. But if you're living your life day to day, it's really hard to carve out this money that you're not going to need for 30 or 40 years. You're looking at today because that is what is in front of you. So we've moved to a system where everyday folks trying to live their lives are trying to save for something that they're not going to need for decades. And thank goodness Joseph had his documents, right? I mean, who keeps things like that for 30? You're expected to hold on to this documentation for 40 years just to prove the money. And I imagine for Joseph, the hardest thing for him was them to say, "You never worked for us," after pushing a wheel that was 1,000 pounds. Can you imagine? And so that's why it's so important for us to understand pensions, because millions of Americans are heading toward an inadequate funded retirement. And without adequate income, older adults will lack the resources that enable them to live independently, afford health care, and continue to contribute to society. Now, while Social Security has kept the majority of seniors from sinking into destitution, far too many retirees are having trouble making ends meet. I love this statistic from the Pension Rights Center that they looked at this. Half of all Americans aged 65 or older have incomes of less than $24,000 a year, far less than the amount of money they need to meet their day-to-day living expenses. Also from the Pension Rights Center, Social Security payments to retirees average only about $15,000 a year, roughly 2/3 of their earnings before retirement. This is little more than the federal minimum wage of $15,000, $80 is also from the Pension Rights Center. Most older adults have little in savings. Only 66% receive income from financial assets. So we are always talking about the stock market, but we need to recognize that more than half of Americans are not in the stock market. And think about that. It's very fearful for them to be in something that a lot of them don't understand. And before I end, and we're Anna Marie and I are going to have a Q&A back and forth, but I want to tell you about how important pensions are. and how the decisions that people make. I have an older sister, went through a bad divorce, and you know what happens in life. And she had a very good job with a good pension, and then the Great Recession hit, and she lost that job. And she didn't have a college education. And so, you know, the benchmark now is that you have a college education. She wasn't able to replace that income. So now she works for a public system in a job that she doesn't like and doesn't really pay her enough. And her little sister, me, is saying, you got to keep that job. And it really hurts my heart to say that every time to her when she's like, I hate this job, I hate this job. But I know that that pension that she's earning, that state pension, is going to be the difference between her and poverty. And so I have to encourage my big sister to stay in a job that she doesn't like. This is real. Some people might say, oh, well, you should tell her to go and do what she likes. But the reality is she needs that pension. She needs that money. I'll do what I can to help her. But I've got my family. I've got 3 kids. I've got another sister who has no pension. And so I say, hang in there, sis, hang in there. She's getting close to where she can qualify for the pension, and then she can leave. And every time I talk to her, I say, just 1 more year, just 2 more years, or 2 more years, 1 more year. Hang in there, sis, hang in there. Get that pension. And I'll tell you when she dates, I say, ask, does he have a pension? That's how important this thing is. So when the recession hit, now we know that it's actually worse for some folks because they lost their job or they couldn't do what they needed to do to save in a 401k plan because they're trying to make up for the losses that they had from COVID. So COVID, where people may have been getting ahead, now are not getting ahead. And so it actually exacerbated the situation, which of course makes pensions even that more important. So I'm just going to wrap up to say that I've always been an advocate for pensions. It pains me to know that we've moved away from this security for so many people. And that whatever we can do, you and I, to encourage companies to be better at providing them, and those who do provide them, to make sure they keep an adequate list of who is going to get this pension, the better we all are. Because pensions are the key to financial security for millions of adults in this country. And we need to do whatever we can to make sure that those of us who still have paid pensions have access to them when we do retire. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for your remarks and for sharing the stories about your grandmother and your sister and their pensions as well.
Thank you. Yeah, don't tell my husband though.
We won't tell.
I wanted to go with the guy with the better pension.
So
it's real, right?
So I have a few questions that I wanted to ask you, but I also wanted to just say to our audience, if you have a question to ask Michelle Singletary, please write it in the chat. And we'll have a few minutes to ask your questions as well. So, you know, you were talking about inequality in the retirement system, and you know, there are extraordinary racial inequities in the U.S. retirement system, and you have written about how COVID is really exacerbating the racial wealth gap, and I was wondering if you can tell us more about that.
Sure. So even going into COVID, there were inequalities, right? And largely because, and we still know this, Gallup poll, the Pew Research Center continues to look at discrimination among Blacks and Hispanics. And so we tend to get paid less. We tend to be in service-oriented jobs or lower paying jobs. And what jobs were hit the most on the COVID? Those jobs. And so many more African Americans, women, lower income folks lost their jobs. So that created a bigger gulf for folks. And so if you were lucky to have a pension during COVID, you lost your job, you lost your pension and your income, obviously. And so now we're at the point where we have to try to help people get back on track. So you were already behind and the COVID pushed you further behind. And so even if people are able to start working again, they've got to pay catch up. So that wealth gap has increased because of COVID. And many people might say, well, okay, they just need to work harder and pull themselves up out of the bootstrap. Why should this be my problem? Well, we now know because of COVID that when so many people don't have financial security, it impacts us all. Higher taxes, more taxation across the board, federal and local. And then the safety nets, there's such a crush on our safety nets. So if you don't want to do it for them, do it for yourself. Because if we don't all participate in making sure people have a living wage and access to retirement security, we all come crashing down. And I think that's why it's so important to close this wealth gap. And stop these conversations about people just need to work harder. I don't think I know more people who work harder than people who are low income. Look at what Joseph did. I mean, my goodness, this man it's been his life in manual labor, doing things that a lot of people would never do. Doesn't he deserve a secure retirement? And that's what the wealth gap is about.
And can I ask you, what do you think we can do? What steps should we be taking as a country to address the racial wealth gap?
We definitely have to have better policies in place. And, there's all kinds, Congress is just, I can't even begin to tell you how I feel about what's going on in Congress. But, for example, with Social Security, we know that the trust funds are underfunded. We know that by 2034, Social Security, the retirement portion, will only be able to pay about 70% or 78% of benefits if it's not fixed. And I know 2034 seems, or 2033 seems so far away, but it isn't. And we're going to march right up to that, and then perhaps have some legislation. Maybe people's benefits are cut. Maybe they'll raise the retirement age. Who knows? We've got to address this problem now. Social Security is so key to people. And so these are the kinds of things, looking at, pensions, for example. Why don't we have a database where companies have to download the information for who has a pension with them, so that we should have a searchable database. We've got the technology to do that, which would make your work a lot easier and would not stress out. People would know, okay, I've lost. What if he didn't have that brown envelope? Those had that brown envelope of all his paychecks. You might not have been able to persuade the company that, yes, in fact, he did work with there. So those are the kinds of things that we need to push, short Social Security, some database so people can find their pensions. And also just even more funds towards organizations like yours to help those people who can't help themselves.
Thank you. I want to switch topics now and talk to you about students. So the Pension Action Center is located at UMass Boston, and we have a lot of students who've been affected by COVID. Their families have been affected by COVID. And I wonder what advice you have for them about how to get back on track financially, and maybe even start thinking about their retirements.
I'm going to say something that's going to sound counterintuitive. Because most, financial experts tell people they should start saving for retirement right away. That dad is, good dad, and they should just make those minimum payments forever. And when I usually tell students that if you have student loan debt, first of all, if you are able, go back home, live with your parents, live with auntie, live with grandma, and spend most of your paycheck trying to get out of that student loan debt. I know that when you start saving for retirement, the younger you are, the further you'll be ahead. Except this is the reality, that when people are loaded down with student loan debt, then life happens. Guess what gets put on the back burner? Retirement. So we can remove that from their budget early on. They still have many years to save for retirement. They need to focus on that. But what often happens is students will get that student loan debt, then they'll put it on deferral, and they'll sort of keep, can't pay the payment right now. I'm going to push it. And then what happens? Interest builds on interest, and a $20,000 loan becomes a $50,000 loan. A $100,000 loan becomes a $200,000 loan. I've seen this where people have a loan that started out, fairly reasonable, but because they deferred it, now they owe so much more. So I would encourage students to do what they can to pay that debt now, and then jump on that retirement like it is like their life literally depends on it. Now, the only caveat is that if they work for a company that offers a workplace retirement plan, I do suggest with a match, I do suggest that they put in enough to get that match, because that's free money. But then only do that and take the rest of the money and pay off the debt. Now, I know there are probably some parents on here thinking, did she say they should come home? And I most certainly did. This notion that as soon as someone graduates, we now push them out the door because otherwise they're not going to be responsible is crazy, especially when we live in so many high cost areas. Right below me in this office is my 26-year-old daughter who has 2 degrees, undergraduate and her graduate degree, who my husband and I begged her to move back home, begged her, because she doesn't have any debt and we don't have any debt for her. So she doesn't even have any student loan debt. But what we told her is that if you stay here for several years, I shouldn't even use to say several, I meant 5, 6, 7 years, and save your entire paycheck, you'll be able to buy your house outright. And that would be a financial game changer. So it took a lot of arm twisting because I'm a little bit of a crazy person, but she has accepted that as she looked at the numbers and she said, if I spend all these years of, paying rent and trying to live when I can save. And here's the other thing, we don't charge her rent. And here's why we don't. We told her that if you put 15% of your income into your workplace retirement plan, we will not charge you rent. And she jumped at that. So she, at the young age of 26, is saving 15% of her income, which will also be a financial game changer for her.
That's wonderful. My husband and I lived with my mom for a period of time, and we did exactly that. We saved the money on rent and we put it towards a house. So I'm gonna tell my mom that that's Michelle Singletary's advice.
It's great advice, and if it's not your mom, your auntie, your grandparent, but that advice is just, it's not well received. Because people say things like, they're 30 and still living at home. When I hear that, and they're saving towards a house and paying off debt, I'm like, good for you. What a smart financial decision. And it's only a season. At the time, I'm sure my daughter is thinking, when am I ever going to get out of my parents' house? But once she does, and she has all of that money and she has a good start of her retirement, she will be grateful that I made her cook dinner once a week.
So I just want to check with Emily. Do we have any questions in the chat?
I don't see any yet, but I do think that Michelle's next book should be about parenting.
But it's so interesting. All of this is connected to our discussion about pensions. Because if we know that fewer employees are providing pensions, and even when they do, they're not as generous as they used to be. All of these financial things that I'm talking about plays into that. So if you have a smaller pension, but you've lived at home, or you don't have debt, or you have the debt, or you're saving aggressively for retirement, you are able to use that pension to supplement your income, and you still create financial security for yourselves. So it's all very interlocked in what I'm saying, all of this. And I like to talk about these issues both from a personal and policy point of view. So we have to take personal responsibility. Absolutely. I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe you save, you don't be in debt, you do all those things. But we also have to look at policy. Right now, there's a lot of retirement legislation, but it's really targeted for higher income individuals. And so we need to really focus on, having more legislation that really helps people save for retirement and shore up the pensions that are out there.
I'm going to ask you another question. Again, though, if there's anyone in the audience who has a question, please put it in the chat. Before we before we move on to our next segment, I did want to ask you about scams, because I know that that's something you've written about in your column recently, and that's been a big problem during COVID. Can you tell us about that?
I tell you, the scammers read the news just like everybody else. And I think COVID in particular, there has been an amazing increase in the number of scams related to COVID, because they know people have lost their jobs. So there are more work at home scams, there are more investment scams because people are trying to catch up. And it's just, they know how to tug at people using the news, because they, they're more gig, scams. So, call us and we'll help you pay for this. And it's really very unfortunate. I did a series of columns about, they call them susus or blessing circles, where people put in $500 and they get, $11,000 back, things like that. A lot of seniors, for example, because they're worried about the stock market, which, it did actually kind of well during COVID when you think about it. I mean, right now it's having this little hiccup, but it actually did well. But, seniors, want to be more conservative. They want to protect their money. Why do they want to protect their money? If they don't have a pension, they want to make sure that money is going to last for them. And when that happens, they become more susceptible to scams, because they're trying to protect, they're trying to eke out more returns. And so they listen to people who say, oh, I've got a guarantee investment, you're not going to lose money. And the other thing that they've done smartly, the scammers, is that it used to be, they might say, oh, you get a 30 or 40% return, but they say things like, oh, I'll give you 8% or 10%. And that sounds very reasonable, but you can't, there's no guaranteed 8% return in anything. And if anybody ever says, I've got a low risk, high return investment, that is a lie. It is a straight up scam. Hang up the phone, slap them in the face, call the police. And I also think that we have to be careful to talk about, because we talk about scams in the sense of we want to blame the victim, but it's not their fault. People are worried about having enough. And when you're worried, it's not good enough to say, if it's too good to be true, it is, because in their mind, it has to be true because I need this money.
That's terrific advice. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure, and we're so grateful that you were able to be a part of our program today.
Oh, well, thank you. Again, thank you for the work that you do. And I tell you, I was so moved by that video about Joseph. And I hope other people listening and watching are as moved as I was to help you do what you do, because there are so many more Josephs out there who need that help. And even if it's just $50 a month, that's a medicine copay. That's, some groceries. And it's really, really important.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So next up, it's my pleasure to begin the part of our program where we thank and recognize Len Fishman. Len, you've been a great boss, a tremendous colleague and mentor. And I know I speak on behalf of everyone at the Pension Action Center when I say that we wish you the very best in your retirement. You've been the director of the Gerontology Institute for 7 years, and I've worked with you for the last 3 years. That has been the capstone of an extraordinary career. Before you joined UMass Boston, you served as CEO of Hebrew Senior Life, New England's largest nonprofit provider of senior housing and healthcare. Before that, Len was president and CEO of Leading Age, and he also served in the cabinet of Governor Christine Todd Whitman as commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Health and Senior Services, where he led the governor's initiative to unite programs serving older people into one cabinet level department. Through this extraordinary record of leadership and service, Len has made a tremendous impact on the field of gerontology and on so many people's lives. On a personal note, Len, I'm so grateful for your faith in me, your support for me, and for your enthusiasm and dedication to PAC. You have played such an important role in building and strengthening PAC. Thank you, Len, for your tremendous advocacy for the issue of older people's financial security. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Nora Moreno-Cargi to say a few words in honor of Len. Nora is the president of Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Foundation and Tufts Health Plan Foundation, and the vice president of corporate citizenship at Point 32 Health. A passionate champion for healthy aging, Nora serves on the Governor's Council to Address Aging in Massachusetts, the Board of Grantmakers in Aging, and the Elder Stakeholders Group convened by AARP Massachusetts to inform policy and practice in aging. She also sits on the board of Wholesome Wave, a nonprofit dedicated to addressing nutrition insecurity. Nora previously served as Director of Global Corporate Citizenship for the Boeing Company, Vice President of Communications for Illinois Action for Children, and Deputy Communications Director for Barack Obama's 2004 US Senate campaign. Nora, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Anna. And thank you for allowing me to just say a few words about Len and what he means to me. I think I was trying to think about the first time when I met Len, and I was like having a little bit of trouble, like where, like when, like how. And what I realized is that when you meet Len, it's like you've known him forever. He is so gracious and welcoming. And that in turn caused me to think about one of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes. She said this: "I've learned that people will forget what you've said, what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And so, Len, for this Midwestern transplant, the Chicagoan who knew nothing about this part of the country, I am grateful to you for the ways you made me feel. And I will remember how welcoming you have been. You know, moving to this birthplace of the revolution was scary and hard, a brave thing. Still, Len, when you heard what I was doing, you affirmed me, you supported the work. And in this place, you helped to advance this movement around addressing matters of aging. So thank you for that, for all the ways that you have been a model to me and to many others. You made me feel that it was okay not to know what the answer was. You reminded me that curiosity is an asset, and even though we live in the intellectual capital of the galaxy, this place, its people, still have much to learn. Len, I have benefited, as have many, from your sage advice, your thoughtful insights, your queries, your questions. You are a giant, a trailblazer, an innovator, a visionary. Thank you for your model leadership in all the places that you have served, in all the things that you have done, because in all those ways that you have led, we are better for it, and we have benefited, especially as we think of older people today and older people in the future. You recognized the changing demographics will require new solutions. You nurtured collaborative teams, you advanced different approaches, making us all know and feel that we were not alone. Your work not only improved long-term services and supports, but you helped me at least understand policy better and practice, and that close association between the two. You laid the foundation for Massachusetts' leadership role in the healthy aging movement. You are truly a pleasure and a joy to work with. I still get the honor of working with you in your role as a board member on the combined foundations. It is an honor to know you. Thank you for your inquisitive nature, for always asking the right questions, for advancing the conversation, and your unwavering pursuit to understand. I am grateful that you will continue to serve on my board as a leader, an advocate, a catalyst in addressing inequities, disparities, and a system that, as we just heard from Michelle, does not work. especially for those most at risk. Len Fishman, you are an amazing presence, always in the moment, making us feel we have your full attention. And we are right, we have your attention. Thank you for the time that you take to really listen, to connect with us, to collaborate with us, and to bring us together. You have touched so many lives. It is a privilege to call you friend. We know that your job description is changing, but that you have still great work ahead of you. Thank you for all that you've done. And I just want to say to the Pension Center, I'm surprised in this way. I want to say that seeing that video, having you share that story, so moved me that I want to be that individual donor that will get you over the top. So I want to make an audible here and commit to helping you meet your goal today. In honor and on behalf of me and my husband, who is a pension receiver. He was a public servant. I just want to say that this really is an important work that you do. And so without any further ado, it is my pleasure to turn the stage over to the man of the hour, the one, the only, Len Fishman.
Wow. Thank you, Nora. I can't wait to meet this guy, Lynn, who you described. And thank you, Nora, for your generosity in stepping up and encouraging everyone to follow your lead. I can tell you that affirming you was a very easy thing to do, and that we have learned a lot from the Midwesterner, as you describe yourself, who brought a very fresh perspective that we needed here in Massachusetts and in New England. So we're so fortunate to have you, and I am lucky that I'll be able to continue working with you on the Point 32 Health Board. And Anna, thank you so much. My wife and I have contributed financially to the Pension Action Center, but my greatest contribution, frankly, was recruiting you to be its leader. Like everyone else who knows you, Anna, I'm tremendously proud of what you've accomplished. So I want to explain briefly why I believe so strongly in the straightforward mission of the Pension Action Center, which is helping retirees get the benefits they've earned, but are too often wrongfully denied. There is a lot to admire about the Pension Action Center, in addition to its worthy mission. And I'd like to mention a handful, starting with the three women who have led the Pension Action Center, each of them deeply committed to social justice, and each of them excellent lawyers. Its founding director and my immediate predecessor as director of the Gerontology Institute, Ellen Bruce, Jeannie Medeiros, who took over from Ellen and kept PAC strong, and its current director, Anna, who keeps finding innovative ways to make the PAC stronger and even more effective. And then there are the volunteer counselors who Anna mentioned, Maureen Egan, Mary Ellen Kempton, Marcia Trenholm, and Connie Vecchione, who, though unpaid, function as members of staff and personify productive and meaningful retirement. Mainly, though, it's about our clients, and I'm so glad that you heard the story of one of them. Half of whom are women, 1/4 of whom are Black. These are retirees and their survivors, mainly people of low and moderate income, who literally would have no one else to fight for them if it were not for the Pension Action Center. And finally, it's about the results. Over $65 million in recovered benefits every dollar of which goes to the Pension Action Center's clients. So here's the thing. Anna did not ask me to make a pitch, but I want to end with one. The PAC operates on a shoestring budget. No one knows that better than I do. Without a dollar wasted, with only 2 lawyers, Anna and Tyler, who with the volunteer counselors, students, and part-time staff for Emily Kennerly managed to achieve these outsized results. But PAC's funding from the federal government has not increased in a decade, even though costs have gone up, meaning PAC needs us. So if you have the means to help, and if you haven't already given, I am urging you to click on the link that you'll find in the chat that Emily gave us. Please, if you haven't given, give. If you've already given, think about whether you could dig a little deeper based on what you've heard today. I'm going to dig a little deeper. And Nora, I thank you so much for stepping up and saying that you and your husband are committing as well, so that we can raise the $5,000 needed or even more. Thank you again, Nora and Anna. I feel honored to be honored by the two of you, and am so glad that my retiring can be of some benefit to the Pension Action Center.
Thank you so much, Lynn. It's been such a pleasure to work with Lynn and get to know him. I was actually really lucky enough to work with him back in 2015 when I was a legal intern at PAC during law school. And it was so great to be able to work with him again when I came back in 2019 as staff attorney. Lynn, we'll miss working with you, and we will definitely miss your leadership, but we're so happy for you to begin this next chapter, and we wish you all the best. And we hope that you'll come and visit us a lot. So everyone, thank you so much. Before we let you go, we want to share a few messages from some of our recent clients.
Because of the Pension Action Center, I have my pension. Thank you, PAC.
Hi everybody, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to the Pension Action Center, specifically Tyler Compton, for all their hard work. Without Tyler Compton and the Pension Action Center, I do not believe my case would have been resolved as quickly, or maybe not even at all. So again, I appreciate all your hard work. Have a nice day, everybody.
Hi, I'd just like to tell you that years ago when I was divorced, I received part of my ex-husband's pension. So that went on for years and everything was fine. And then several years ago, I had a letter from who had the pension saying that they overpaid me, that I owed them thousands of dollars, and I would not receive a pension after that. I'm on a fixed income. I didn't know what to do, and somehow I got in touch with Pension Action Center in Massachusetts, and I can't tell you how they helped me. They guided me, they helped me, and without them, I probably would have had to pay all that money back, and I didn't. In fact, I got my pension cut, but I still had it, and I received an amount for when they didn't pay me. But I'm sure that I would have never got that money or any action done without them. So I want to really thank you. You did help me at a time that I was very stressed out. And thank you, Ann.
Hi, my name is Trina and I'm from Chicago. On behalf of my mom and my entire family, I wanted to thank the Pension Action Center for helping me get my dad's pension for my mom. Thank you, PAC. Love you.
I want to thank our clients for sharing those kind words. It's an honor to serve them. As we wrap up today, I also want to thank Nora and Len for your generosity and also for your very kind words. And I'd like to express my appreciation for all of our sponsors, the host committee, our PAC advisory board, and to each of you for joining us today. I also want to thank Emily Kennerly, Lauren Lewis, Vero Betances, Mark O'Sullivan, John Gesso, Vanessa Chatterley, and the McCormick Dean's Office for helping to put this event together. And again, I want to thank our clients for allowing us to share their stories. Thank you so much for all that each of you does to support retirement security. Thank you for joining us, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.